thumb and index fingers together. Straightening your body as much as possible. Closing your eyes. Bringing your awareness into the moment. Focus on your breath. Breathe from your abdomen. So when you inhale, expand your abdomen. When you exhale, gently squeeze your abdomen in. And bring your mind into focus over your forehead area. Sitting comfortably, mind calm. We're going to repeat the mantra Om 3 times. So inhale comfortably and don't be shy, vocalize it. You'll get the vibration by making the sound, and we share that sound. Inhale deeply. Again, inhale deeply. Once more, inhale. I'll chant one short Shanti mantra to begin. Sahana bhavatu, sahano bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavahe, tejasvina tamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I'm saluting my gurus. Om Bolo Satguru Sivananda Maharaj ki Jai. Swami Vishnu Devananda Maharaj ki Jai. Om Tat Sat. Namaskar. Good afternoon. Welcome once again. My name is Nataraj. I'm part of the Sivananda Yoga Vedanta Centers International Organization with our headquarters in Canada, Montreal, Canada. I'm based at one of our ashrams in South India, in the state of Kerala, near the city called Trivandrum. The ashram is called Dhanwantari Ashram, in a place called Neyyar. Has anyone been there by any chance? No? Okay, well, you're all welcome to come. It's a little bit of paradise on earth. As you probably heard, Kerala is a beautiful state of India, very green and mostly with coconut trees. So we are following the teachings of our gurus, Swami Sivananda, who is considered like a modern day saint of India, who lived from 1887 to 1963. He had many disciples, many great teachers who were his disciples. And one of them was our teacher, founder, Swami Vishnu Devananda, who was also from Kerala himself, and who founded this organization called the Sivananda Yoga Vedanta Centers. Swami Vishnu Devananda is known to be a great Guru Bhakta, in other words, highly devoted to his teacher. And he said everything he did only in the name of Swami Sivananda and with Swami Sivananda's grace. So that kind of attitude actually helped him a lot, and he achieved a lot of things in his life. He left his body in 1993, and in his lifetime he actually established over 20 yoga centers and we have about 12 ashrams in different countries around the world. And Swami Sivananda encouraged his disciples, including Swami Vishnu Devananda, to go to different places and to spread the basic teachings of yoga to different people around the world. And it's people like that who have made yoga what it is today. 50, 60 years ago, as you can imagine, yoga was not such a well-known subject or practice. Today it's just everyday concept. Everyone knows about it. We're having now second year International Yoga Day, so it's become an international phenomenon. And it's due to the to the work and the vision of people like that, not only Swami Shivananda and Swami Vishnudevananda, but a number of different people, yogis, who've taken this knowledge and spread it around the world. And are continuing to do that in different ways. So it's a wonderful and exciting times that we live in, where yoga is becoming a kind of mainstream thing. And for many people it means different things. It's working? Yeah, okay. I don't know if you can see how brightly it is. Yeah, not bad. Swami Shivananda, Swami Vishnudevananda's pictures on the top there. But ultimately, yoga is a lifestyle. Okay. For some time, particularly in the West, and not only in the West, even in India, people say yoga, they're considered as a form of physical exercise. Right? And this has been particularly the attitude in the West, because that's mostly how it's been presented, and our organization is no exception. And that's not a problem, I don't think. It's maybe an appropriate way to do it. Swami Vishnudevananda arrived in America in 1957, and in 1957, again, yoga was not well understood, and he looked at the culture, and he looked at the people, and tried to see how he could introduce the practice of yoga into the everyday lifestyle. And one thing he realized is that most people have a car. Even in 1950s in America, people mostly had cars, which was not the case in India at all in those days. And it seemed like most people actually understood their car better than they understood their own bodies. So he used the system we call the 5 points of yoga to help people understand how to use yoga in their day-to-day life, and how to keep it up, and why it's important for them. And of course, when we talk about yoga, it's a very broad term I'm using, and I'm implying not only the physical practices, but also the energy work that we do, say with pranayama and breathing, as well as the devotional practices that we call bhakti yoga, as well as the meditation practices that we call meditation and Raja Yoga, and as well as the philosophical inquiry that we call Jnana Yoga, the traditional system called the 4 paths of yoga. Let me just, I think I have a screen, slide on that. Okay, oops. Yes, traditionally you find the spiritual path is described as the 4 paths of yoga. And these 4 paths are actually all going to the same point, of what we call yoga. As you might not know, yoga means union. And you can also interpret that union in different ways. And one beautiful way I interpret it is by using this mudra, which is called Chin Mudra, which, if I'm not mistaken, mudra means a gesture. Chin implies consciousness, the gesture of consciousness. And to me it represents the ultimate point of yoga. Now, one thing that we have in yoga is that it's very holistic. So, from a yogic point of view, we have 3 bodies, which are represented by these 3 fingers. So all of us are actually living at this moment 3 lives. You might find it astounding to believe, but it's true. In other words, we have a physical body, which is represented by maybe the small finger. Why the small finger? Because that's actually the most limited part of our life. Our physical body is determined by our weight, our sex, age, etc., our physical constitution. And for example, at this very moment, you are not much, hopefully, concerned about your physical body. You know, there are a tremendous amount of things going on in your body at this moment. Your heart is beating, your stomach is digesting a lot of food, a lot of chemical engineering is going on, hormones are being released. But are you aware of these things? Are you trying to control these things, or do you have to control them? No, it's all happening in a very automatic way and very beautifully. much better than actually any scientist or laboratory could do. So that's our physical state, and as long as it's in good condition, actually we're not aware of it. In fact, we could say that is a measure of our health. A good measure of our health is how detached we are from our physical body, or how unaware we are of it. Generally, we only become aware of our physical body when there's some problem, and that's what we call dis-ease. In fact, the word itself means dis-ease. We're no longer at ease. Some part of our body is disturbing us, and then we become aware of it, and it can be a real nuisance. If you're in perfect health, we would basically say you should not actually be aware of your body. You should move through life completely freely without any physical concerns. So that's our physical body, limited part of our existence. What takes up most of our time and energy? Mind, right? In fact, you could virtually say our mind takes up all our time and energy. 90% of the day we are in our mind and thoughts. Even our perceptions, like you are listening to me and looking at me, this is only happening through your mind, through your five senses. Your brain, nervous system is transforming these stimuli into thoughts, which includes vision, sound, smell, taste, touch. But it's all happening in your mind. And that, of course, makes a big part of our life. And according to our state of mind, the quality of our life will change. One day you're in a good state of mind, happy state of mind, everything looks good. Another day, for some reason, you're in a bad state of mind, miserable. The same things look miserable. The same people are no longer are so nice anymore. Is it because the world has changed? No, actually most of the time it's our mind has changed for some reason or other. So that's a big factor in our life, our state of mind, and how we're thinking and how we're feeling about life. So that's what we call our second body. In strictly speaking, it's called the subtle body, which is composed of more energy, which includes the mind, but that's not the totality of it, it's a part of it. So our mind is considered an energetic process, and it depends on energy. And it's of a subtle nature, it's not of a physical nature, but obviously interconnected with the physical body as well. The third body, we're not generally aware of it, but we do talk about it, our soul, our spiritual life, but we might not really know what it's all about. But in the yoga science, it's very well described, and it's got a very specific name. In English, we would translate it as the causal body. So, as the name suggests, it's the cause for what we are, or what we manifest in our mind and body. And I always use the analogy of this rosary. We have a rosary here. Each bead could represent one physical body. And according to yoga, we accept the concept of reincarnation. So we have manifested in many physical forms, the physical bodies from one life to the next. But if you look at this, there's something connecting all these beads. It's a string, right? So that string represents what we call our causal body. And the threads of the string are being created by our experiences and actions, what we call our karmas and samskaras. Samskaras means the habits and patterns that we develop in our lifestyle, in our day-to-day lifestyle, in our life. These are retained in a very subtle form, and these patterns persist even after the disintegration of our physical body. And they form the template for our next manifestation in a physical and astral or subtle body. In other words, we are creating our programs, we're creating our patterns in our life through our life experiences. And past experiences are influencing us now. At the same time, we are evolving new patterns as we grow and change in the current life. And these are being passed on from life to life, like this string and this rosary. That's called our subtle body. So this is very basic and important concept in a yogic lifestyle. That you should appreciate that you are living life on all these levels. You're not just merely a physical body, which I think we can all appreciate. But even more than that, we are not just a mental state, a mixture of thoughts and emotions and memories. We also have a deeper level, which if you look into it, you can start to appreciate. If you start thinking and looking at your life, you can start to appreciate there are many factors in your life that you cannot readily explain just on the basis of this life experience. Certain talents that you might have, and also maybe some weaknesses and issues that you're struggling to deal with, but you don't know where they're coming from and why you're struggling with them. At the same time, you don't know why you're particularly good at some things that other people are not. We would say this is all on the basis of these karmas and samskaras that you have developed in past lives and that are carrying forward and are emerging life after life. And it's a dynamic process, it's evolving all the time. And the yogic practices that we do, whatever yogic practice you do, even the most simple physical practices like yoga asana or kriyas, cleansing techniques, they will have some impact on all these three levels. They will impact even very subtle practices like chanting and meditation will even have an effect on your physical body, they'll have effect on your mind, and ultimately they'll even have effect on your soul. How are you going through life, and why? What are you doing, and why are you doing it? So I'm sure most of you have appreciated maybe through the practice of asana. Most of us have come into yoga through the physical practices of asana. After, it's not very long for us to appreciate, maybe even the first class, we start to appreciate it does affect our mind. It does affect the way we think and feel, the yoga. And if you keep practicing regularly, I'm sure you also appreciate maybe after some months or even years, it can even change your whole lifestyle, your whole approach to life, your priorities, what you think is important, and where your happiness is coming from. These things can start to change in a very subtle way. We basically say it's starting to change our causal body, what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. And this will have implications in our future too. So yogic lifestyle is a very holistic lifestyle. It's not a practice that you do for a few hours a day and then, that's it. No, it's a lifestyle that works on you on all the different levels. And as I said earlier, yoga means union. One interpretation is that yoga helps us to unite these three bodies, helps to bring these three bodies into a state of balance and health. Healthy body, as well as a healthy mind and emotions, as well as a healthy lifestyle. What we're doing in our life and why we're doing it is in a positive, fruitful and beneficial way for yourself and for everyone around you. Then we could say we're really healthy. What would you rather? To have a very good body and be mentally disturbed, maybe seriously depressed? Or would you rather have a crippled body and a happy mind? Is that a tough choice? Not really. We'd all prefer to have a happy mind, isn't it? Our mind is more important than our body. The next stage is, what would you prefer? To have a healthy body and a healthy mind, but no sense of purpose, no sense of value in life, no sense of that you are achieving anything or you mean anything in life. You're just simply going through life enjoying it, but no sense of real purpose or idealism. This is also a problem, particularly in developed countries. People have a very high standard of living, even physically well, mentally even they have what they need and they're content, but still can get very depressed about life. Even happened to me. I went through that process, and at some point I asked, what's my purpose in my life? What's really going to make me happy? Particularly when we're not happy, we ask these questions. So for me, anyway, a sense of purpose, so what's the meaning of life and why we're doing the things we're doing is important, to make life really meaningful and enjoyable. So that comes onto the spiritual level, really. So yoga addresses all these aspects. As I said earlier, Swami Vishnudevananda noticed in the West that people seem to know more about their cars than about themselves and their bodies. So he developed a simple system called the 5 points of yoga that we use to promote a yogic lifestyle. Okay, it's a kind of catchphrase, but it encapsulates the main simple points that if we put them into practice and try to maintain them, even one of them, we will definitely appreciate some positive changes in our physical health as well as our mental health, And ultimately, even in our spiritual evolution, we will see some positive changes. So these 5 points of yoga, just move the slide. Right. Okay. 5 points of yoga. Swami Vishnudevananda decided to use the analogy of a motor car to explain the 5 points of yoga. He said you can consider your physical body as a vehicle. Just like you have a car, your physical body is a vehicle only, a physical vehicle that's transporting you through your life. And you can think of your life like a journey. We don't really know where our journey started. If you consider the whole spectrum of reincarnation, we don't really know when that started. But this particular stage of your journey with this vehicle started at what we might call conception, but generally we will refer to our birth, when maybe you become aware of our physical body in the world. And our life is like a journey. We go do many things, we have many experiences, and then ultimately, like any vehicle, of course it's a physical vehicle, it's going to wear down and break down. And after some time, it's going to have to break down completely. So like when you have a car that's maybe 20, 30 years old, and it's not running very well, generally what do? We will scrap it, and it's going to get broken down and recycled. Same thing happens to our body. Our body is going to break down. As we saw earlier, our body is made up of 5 elements. So the elements will go back to their source. The air in our body will go back to the air. The water in our body will go back into the water. The solids in our body will go back to the soil. The bones and meat and everything will get dissolved back into the soil. And it will get recycled. The body will get recycled in nature. But as we said, our soul will continue and manifest again in another new body, which we could call rebirth. And we will continue this journey in a new vehicle, just like you buy a new car. And he also emphasized, so one is that, okay, obviously your life is not just this one physical body. There's much more to your life than just the body. But at the same time, it's also very important that we take the body seriously, and that we should try to take care of it to the best of our ability. Even as spiritual seekers, we depend on this body for our experience and life. So as I'm sure you appreciate, when you're not well, physically not well, life can become a very difficult process. Sickness can take up all our time and energy, and we're not able to do much easily. So our first responsibility, even as spiritual seekers, is to actually maintain our physical health. And the 5 points particularly will give us a lot of help in this direction. And he said, like any vehicle, it'll have certain requirements. So if you get a new vehicle, for example, one of the first things you might have to do, say after 5,000 kilometers or so, what is that? Change the oil, right? And take it for a service every 5,000. And the most important thing they'll do is change the oil, engine oil. So I'm sure you weren't expecting to learn about car mechanics in a yoga class, but Swami Vishnu was a very practical and technical type of person, so he used this practical example. So you have to change the oil, and the reason of that is to maintain the lubrication of the engine and other moving parts, the wheel bearings, etc. Likewise, in our body we have many moving parts, mostly the joints, for example. And if you haven't noticed, maybe some of you are getting a little older, especially once you reach 50 or so, you notice your body tends to get more and more stiff as you get older. That's a natural tendency of the body. If it's not stretched, we get stiff. So the first point for lubrication, called proper exercise, practicing the asana. Asana is a very simple form of exercise which helps to stretch our body and maintain the mobility and movement of our body. And if you're doing asana regularly, you should actually be mobile throughout your life. We see, unfortunately, many examples as people get older, they get more and more limited in their mobility, and sometimes they can hardly move around at all, can even hardly get out of the house or sit comfortably anywhere. This is a big limitation, and not one that we would like to avoid if possible. So the asana, at the very least, will help us to do this. The second point, called proper breathing or pranayama. Usually I make this a quiz, but it's already on the screens. It's not going to be so difficult for you to work it out. But we put the battery there. Why battery? What does the battery do for the car? It's a source of electricity, right? And so it's a source of energy, actually. And if your battery is flat, you could have an engine and petrol, everything. You turn the key, nothing's going to happen. So we need that source of energy to make the whole thing happen, a spark to cause a combustion. And where do we get our main source of energy? Is through our breathing. And specifically the chemical oxygen, right? It's essential for our combustion. Our cells are able to split the oxygen and liberate energy, which they use for the metabolism. So breathing is essential for our energy, much more important than food. We can survive on storage of food for quite a long time, but we can't survive without breathing for more than seconds or even a minute or so. A couple of minutes maybe. And then the cells will start to die. So proper breathing to maximize the amount of air, number one, oxygen into our system. And then, as the name implies, pranayama, the control of the breath will give you a handle on your energy, which is part of the second subtle body, which is the dynamic energy which maintains the life of your body. We call that prana. And essentially, it's like a battery. Your subtle body is like a battery. And in fact, sometimes they localize it to your solar plexus. This is the main energy center of your astral body. And I see it as a nice visualization when you are doing pranayama, something like anuloma viloma or any particularly breath retention. When we hold our breath comfortably, we are concentrating our prana. So you can visualize that you are concentrating your prana whenever you're holding your breath in pranayama, and you increasing the level of your energy, rising your energy, increasing it. Like you might charge a flat battery with a charger. Likewise, you're charging your astral body with more prana whenever you do pranayama. Third point, we call proper relaxation, and it's based simply on the asana called shavasana, or relaxation pose, corpse pose. And we say it's like a cooling system. What is the cooling system? The radiator. Because the car is running, it's always creating heat, and we have to get rid of that heat, otherwise the car is going to burn out. The engine will get burnt out. So likewise, as we go through life, we're also exposed to a kind of heat. And we generally call this heat stress. And it's a very common part of our lifestyle. In fact, I don't think we can avoid stress completely. We can try to minimize it, but you can never really totally avoid it. As long as we're alive and we need food and shelter and some basic things, we are under some pressure to survive, and there will be some stress in our life. What is also maybe more important way to approach stress is how we can not get affected by the effects of stress. Each time we get stressed, certain things happen in our body and mind. And if this goes on chronically and we're not able to manage them, ultimately we also burn out. Either physically or mentally we'll burn out. And this is unfortunate. It is a common problem in the modern developed society. Most of the diseases are related to stress-related diseases. So it's a big reality in our modern lifestyle, that we should know how to handle the stress. We cannot say we can avoid it completely, but also how to get rid of it. Just like a radiator can get rid of the heat from the engine, we can also release the effects of stress from our body and mind. And this shavasana, combined with the technique of auto-suggestion, which if we include in our regular practice, using mental suggestion to relax the different parts of the body, can actually reverse the effects of stress. Fourth point, we call it proper diet. Traditionally, a yogic diet is what we call lacto-vegetarian diet. Consuming a minimal amount of milk. Milk is debatable, some people can't tolerate milk, but generally it's considered a healthy food in the yogic sense, but it could be vegan as well. But certainly we avoid meat and eggs, and also even some vegetarian foods which are considered not yogic, particularly in the sense that they affect the mind. Do you know any examples of vegetables that we yogis avoid? Garlic and onions are common, and mushrooms also there. Mushrooms, they say, have a low energy, low pranic value. They grow in dark places. They don't have much solar energy. Onions and garlic, because they're quite strong vegetables, and they're difficult to digest, and they also have a strong effect on the mind, to disturb the mind, the balance of the mind. So they're counterproductive for meditation, for example. Not necessarily unhealthy, like garlic has been shown to be healthy for the physical body, but for the mind it will have this side effect. So for that reason, yogis would avoid these so they can have a more calm and peaceful state of mind. So that's the diet, lacto-vegetarian diet as a fuel for the car. Yeah, you have to put the right fuel in the car, otherwise the car's not going to run properly. So like with the oxygen, we burn the food for the fuel, combustion. But there's also another point, which is even more important than the fuel, is that the fact that our physical body is actually made up of the food we eat. One of the names for the body, physical body in yogic terminology is called Anna Maya Kosha. Anna means food, actually. Maya means made from. Kosha means the sheath. So it's that part of you that's made from food. So each and every molecule in your body is only come from your food only. Our body is made up of organic chemicals, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and some other minerals, etc. But each and every chemical that's in your body has only come from the food you've eaten. So it doesn't take much to appreciate the quality of your physical body is directly related to the quality of your food. If you're eating pure, nutritious food, naturally your body is going to be in better condition than if you're eating junk food, which is not easily digestible or used in your body. It has to be managed and maybe got rid of. So again, vegetarian food is generally shown to be most easily digestible and most healthy for your maintenance and growth. Finally, maybe the most important part of the whole thing is who's going to take care of the car. Who's going to do all these things, the lubrication, check the battery, the radiator, make sure we put the right fuel, etc., etc. We call the driver, of course. Huh? And in our case, who or what is in charge of our physical body, of our vehicle? Our mind, right? Basically, our mind is controlling and directing our physical body. So the fifth point is really addressing the quality of the mind, or the driver. And we call it positive thinking and meditation. Positive thinking based on, we follow the philosophy called Vedanta philosophy. And meditation is a technique of learning how to be aware of your mind, how to improve your mind, and ultimately how to use your mind, concentrate the mind, and ultimately how to transcend your mind to what we call self-realization, which is the ultimate goal of all the yogic practices, is a state of pure freedom from body, mind and soul, which, as Swami Sivananda often clearly states, is only possible through meditation. And again, coming back to the symbolism which I did not finish earlier, the Chin Mudra, the mudra of consciousness, if we consider this finger, generally what does this finger suggest? Particularly when I'm doing this, ego, right? We could say this finger represents our individual consciousness. As we know ourselves, we consider ourselves as individual centers of consciousness. And this finger we would take to represent something called universal consciousness, common consciousness, which connects everything, not only all of us, but everything in this universe is connected by that. And yoga is that union, on an ultimate level, the spiritual union of our limited ego consciousness with the universal consciousness, and complete freedom from these three things. These three things now mean what? I already mentioned this one is physical body, subtle body, and even our causal body. So, from all the limiting forms that we might have, from the most gross physical form to the more subtle mental forms, which we generally call our character, personality, and then ultimately even that soul, which even we don't normally appreciate or understand in our day-to-day life. and which is often described even by religions. Each religion will talk about the soul. After death, the soul will go to heaven or hell, or get reincarnated, or go in suspense somewhere and then come back another time at the second coming. So many concepts about what happens to the soul. But from a yogic point of view, even the soul is not ultimately your ultimate identity. You're beyond all these three things. And all of these kind of practices, whether it's according to the 4 paths of yoga or even these 5 points of yoga, as I said earlier, each time you practice, you're taking one step closer towards that liberation. One step closer to recognizing and differentiating what you are and what you are not. But in this process, to get there, actually we need to use these 3 bodies. These 3 bodies are the means whereby we can realize this. Without the body, mind and soul, I suppose there will never be an agenda in the first place. So you could say they're our best friends or our worst enemies. But the fact is, we have them and we have to work with them. And that's what yoga shows us. Basically, yoga shows us the way, how we can work with our body, mind and soul in the best way possible for the best possible outcome, rather than abusing or disusing them and ultimately making life more painful and difficult for ourselves. How we can use our body, mind and soul to find greater standard of health, harmony and health, and ultimately spiritual realization, which will come as a natural process. It's not something we have to force. As we're doing these practices in the proper way and the proper guidance, these things will evolve naturally. It's not something we have to try and pursue or put a deadline on. It's going to happen its own way in its own time. The rest of the slides are just a review of these things. The 4 paths of yoga, again, it's another way of looking at this, how the different practices in yoga relate to different parts of our personality. So karma yoga is generally called the path of selfless service, and we said relates to our hands, how we can develop a yogic lifestyle in our day-to-day activities. It's maybe one of the most practical ways to put yoga into practice, in the sense we can practice karma yoga anytime, anywhere. You don't have to be in a yoga class, you don't have to be in any particular place or any time. It's basically what actions are you doing, not what actions you're doing, but what type of actions and why are you doing your actions, and how are you doing your actions, with what intentions. This is the essence of karma yoga, and it can be practiced and should be practiced all the time. And it's actually a very deep subject. We had a very nice talk about it this morning, and I think there'll be another talk about karma yoga tomorrow, and I highly encourage you to attend that talk by Meena. She explains it in a very clear and deep way. The second yoga we call bhakti yoga, the yoga of the heart. Heart, because we say relates to our emotions. We all have emotions, and emotions are a very powerful force. They can really drive us in different directions, positive as well as negative direction. So bhakti yoga is it's a science, also a science whereby we can tune our emotional energy in a positive, uplifting way, which we call devotion, the path of devotion and self-surrender. So again, there are various techniques and practices that we can use in bhakti yoga to channel our emotions in this positive way. Raja yoga, the science of mastery of mind. So it's specifically looking at techniques to work with our mind. It includes hatha yoga. Hatha yoga means the physical asana and pranayama, as well as the more sophisticated technique of meditation. It all becomes Raja yoga to ultimately learn how to control this subtle body and mind that we have. And of course it's very powerful, therefore the name is Raja yoga, the royal yoga. The last yoga is called Jnana yoga. Specifically, we would say the yoga of the intellect, as opposed to the ordinary mind, our higher mind, our intellectual mind, that can reason, use logic, and understand things. Stimulating our higher mind through the path of Jnana yoga, path of self-knowledge and wisdom through study, contact with the Guru, contemplation, and assimilation of what you understand into your life. This would be the path of Jnana Yoga. It's actually a very internal process, an intellectual process, which should ultimately manifest naturally in your life. But it depends on proper understanding, an intellectual understanding of who you are, and what you're supposed to do, and how you're supposed to do it. This is again the area of the philosophy of Vedanta, comes into Jnana Yoga. So that's the traditional system. This is, you'll find well described in scriptures, for example, like Bhagavad Gita. Krishna describes these 4 paths of yoga very clearly to Arjuna, how to practice them, and what is their value. Swami Sivananda and Swami Vishnu and our school, we stress what we call synthesis of yoga. The way we present yoga is in a very simple way, practical way, generally designed just for the uninitiated public who are not familiar with yoga much, or maybe just on the physical level, but how to expand that into more and more areas through things like these 4 paths of yoga and the 5 points, and to make it more and more part of your lifestyle, a general lifestyle. And we call it synthesis of yoga. Put all of these practices into your day-to-day life. By nature, we will tend towards one or another. Some of us are very active. We like to do things. We can't sit around doing nothing. We can't study books for too long. We can't meditate for too long. Or we can't chant for too long, or do pujas and worship. We like to do things. So then karma yoga would be our tendency. So we like to do service, as many people are doing here today. That's one thing. But don't just do service, because then you'll just become like get burnt out and you'll just be running around all the day. You have to take some time and make some effort to do some other practices, some devotional practice like chanting, some meditation and asana, pranayama, to learn how to control your mind. And also read something, study something, challenge your mind, try to broaden your horizons through some form of study, and so on. Each one of us will tend towards one or another, but we should try to keep them all alive at some proportion. Then we have a balanced development, a balanced spiritual development, and a balanced lifestyle generally. It will help us to move forward. Each one of these has its risk if you do it in excess. As I say, if you totally into karma yoga, you can just become a kind of workaholic and sacrifice yourself for others. This is a common example you see, particularly in mothers. Mothers will sacrifice themselves for their family. Maybe at the risk of their own health, they burn out. And at the end of the day, children leave, husband might die, and then what's left? It can be a problem. So don't do that. Don't do it extreme. Don't be too much devotional either. That could lead to what we call fanaticism. My beliefs, my religion is the only one. My God is the only one. This is also not the ultimate way forward. Too much Raja Yoga. Well, as I said, Raja Yoga is a very powerful practice actually. If you learn mastery of your mind and energy, you become a super being, superhuman. And there's the risks of it getting corrupted if you're not ethically pure, because you have a lot of power and energy in your hands if you learn how to control your mind and energy. And also the risk of becoming proud also. So the ego also has to be managed. So things like karma yoga and bhakti yoga generally help us to reduce our ego. And same thing for jnana yoga. If you're just into study and books all the time, you might just become a little too dry and too intellectual. And we see examples of this. People might know the scriptures backwards, but are they yogis? No, they could just be intellectuals, and that's it. They're not actually manifesting it. To be a yogi means you should know these things, but you also have to manifest them. And the manifestation generally comes out in things like karma yoga and bhakti yoga. How you express yourself and how you behave. Otherwise, you're merely just an intellectual, which actually doesn't help in our spiritual development. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I have some. Before we come up to the end of our time, I want just to give you some time for questions or comments. I'm really happy to hear from you. And yeah, we also should finish on time because the next session will start immediately. But we do have about 5 or 10 minutes, so anyone has anything they'd like to ask or say, I'd be happy to hear from you. Yeah. Scared of, it won't bite you, don't worry. But everyone should hear you also.
I did Sivananda when I was in India, and I believe that it's based on 12 poses. The practice of yoga. So why only 12 when there's so many? And also, like, Sivananda start with the pranayama, but they're like hatha yoga. I think they start with asana because they say from asana where you open up all the energy channels. Then you do pranayama. When you do pranayama, then you do meditation. So it goes this way. But Sivananda tend to go the other way. So why?
So first point, why 12 basic postures? These 12 postures that we use are considered major postures, classical postures from the scriptures, and they're well described as major postures. It's in essence, I think, generally speaking, the way we present yoga, we try to present the most in the least way possible. Do the least amount of things for the maximum amount of effect. To try to not complicate the practices, simplify, should I say, try to simplify the practice as much as possible. This is our general approach. So these 12 postures are basic postures. You definitely can do more postures, but I would say it'd be difficult to do less postures and still get as much effect if you do those 12 postures properly. So there are major postures that will give you very strong and good results. Certainly you can do more, and there's no issue doing more. But you find it difficult maybe to do less, maybe is the point. Because as we know, we're all pushed for time, so we're always trying to encapsulate things, make it less and less as much as we can. So that's one point. Then the second point is, why do we pranayama before the asana? I'm speculating why, and I've heard a report that Swami Vishnu used to teach the classes. And what used to happen is that people would come to class, do start the asana, as you say, classically asana comes first, pranayama comes next, and then meditation will end up. This is called Ashtanga Yoga. Classically that's the way, but people would come for asana, and then after the asana get up and go. They weren't interested in doing the pranayama or meditation. We don't do meditation anyway. So what Swami did, he said, okay, I'll catch them. Start with the pranayama. They have to do the pranayama before they do the asana. And actually it works out quite well. As I say, we're not aiming for meditation in that particular class, but I can definitely emphasize this, that people come off the street, generally speaking, and they've got a lot of things in their mind, especially in the city. And that initial relaxation and that initial pranayama is a very powerful way to slow them down and bring them into the moment. So when they get into the asana, the mind is quite clear and peaceful and focused, and they can really get into the asana without distraction. If we just started doing asana immediately, it would be of a kind of stimulating nature, and maybe even continually stimulating the mind. But that pranayama and relaxation really slows the mind right down, and then they do the rest of the class in a very calm and peaceful state. So it's an effective technique to slow down the mind. And generally speaking, what you practice in one day will have a good effect for at least 24 hours. So if you do this in the morning and you do your meditation in the evening, you'll still have a good effect. They will complement your meditation, even if you're not doing it immediately or after each other. Is that okay? Somebody else have a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the 4 paths of yoga. If you were to put a percentage to each one of those for yoga as, to keep you healthy, what would that look like? For a typical Westerner, maybe a mother busy working.
Okay. Percentage-wise. Well, I agree with you. It wouldn't necessarily be the same percentage for everyone. And I think the percentage will change from person to person, and even from the same person, maybe with our age and spiritual evolution. So the first thing that comes to mind, generally when in our organization, when people join our organization as volunteers, the first thing I notice is that we do a lot of karma yoga. We're basically doing a lot of service. We're a service-oriented organization, taking care of people and serving people. So that seems to be a lot of our practice, and we don't seem to have always enough time to do things like meditation and asana even. But we do make sure we do a little bit at some point, and hardly enough time to do any proper study. But that's generally appropriate, actually, for most people who are new to spiritual practice. This karma yoga is very appropriate in the sense it helps us to purify our mind and help to focus our mind and to, manage our ego. Some basic lessons on how to deal with our ego we cover with karma yoga. And once we have achieved a certain level of purification and mind control, then it starts to become more practical to do things like Raja Yoga and meditation. When our mind has become relatively purified through karma yoga and maybe through some devotional practice like chanting, which don't require a lot of intellectual stimulation, but a lot of physical interaction. These things purify our mind, so meditation will start to become easier. And it's only with a fairly disciplined mind through Raja Yoga that we can start considering Jnana Yoga in a big way. In the sense, we need a very pure and focused and disciplined mind to really study Jnana Yoga in a proper way, to maintain it. So as we evolve, generally I would say the Jnana Yoga and Raja Yoga become more important, but when we begin Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga is generally more useful and practical. Okay. Any last question? You want to say something? Yeah. I think this will have to be the last one, then we have to finish.
Thank you for a beautiful talk, first of all. One of the things I read about in terms of the Sivananda system is it starts in the idea of a path of involution, and quite early on it does headstand. Can you give a description of why that comes about?
Okay. It's kind of similar to the other question, why do we have these 12 postures only, and why would we start with a headstand, inverted posture? Well, from the point of view of the most important postures, we say the headstand is called the king of the asana. It's considered generally as the most powerful asana, and the main effect, of course, of headstand, it brings a lot of blood circulation to our brain, which is one of the main organs in our body, and it refreshes the brain and helps to improve our mind and thinking generally. And maybe just as important, if not more important, it's by doing that, trying to do headstand, it encourages a very important quality called courage. We face our fears. Having said that, I want to qualify that very quickly, that you don't do the headstand in a haphazard way without proper support and guidance. And some people would even be advised not to do the headstand according to certain health issues such as blood pressure, glaucoma, neck and vertebral problems, etc. But still, and Swami Vishnu obviously felt it was an important posture that we should make it available and even encourage people to try to practice.